I never wanted to be a software engineer. I wanted to be a doctor. A lot of my family is in medicine. I always looked up to them, and frankly, I think there was probably a bit of a family expectation. But doctors save lives. They make pretty good money, and they're respected by almost everyone. Who wouldn't want to be one? The idea of sitting in front of a computer day in and day out, it never even crossed my mind. What impact can a software engineer even have? Then, one day, I downloaded somebody else's code, and running it would transform my life forever. I could have never predicted it at the time. Of course it was Minecraft. I mean, what do you want? I grew up in the 2000s. I was a Disney XD kid. I spent so many hours playing that game with my friends that even now, filming and editing this video brings back a huge wave of nostalgia. Then one day I got bored of mining and crafting and thought, how cool would it be if I had my own Minecraft mod? Only problem was, I didn't know how to make one. So like any kid that was born in the internet generation, I went onto YouTube and looked up some tutorials. Downloaded Eclipse, this was before IntelliJ and VS Code were so popular, and suddenly I was staring at a blinking cursor in my first IDE. I spent hours watching tutorials, following step by step, copying code from the wizards behind the screen, who were kind enough to put hours and hours and hours of education out there on the internet. I was creating textures, I was creating new blocks, new weapons, and finally, I had a working mod. I added in a new block and ore called adamantite, named after myself, but something was still wrong. I had a working mod, but I didn't feel satisfied at all. I mean, was it really my mod? Spent all those hours and really I had just copied someone else's code. So I decided to set out again. I was going to learn this coding thing, and I was going to do it properly this time. I quit multiple times, but each time I remembered a little bit more about what I had done the previous time. I understood a little bit more, and I was relying less on things like Stack Overflow and the internet. It was amazing. I could solve problems, I could make things happen all on my own accord, and by the time I was 16, I was pretty confident in my abilities. The most important thing that programming taught me was that I enjoy logic and problem solving. And on the flip side of this, I started to discover how much I hated anything that had to do with memorization. I just couldn't understand why school had such an emphasis on memorization, sitting there for hours, drilling and repeating, for things that I never thought I would use again ever in my life. It became more difficult to study for things that had memorization. My grades in biology started to lower and lower, and I started to realize that if I hated memorization this much, I probably wasn't going to be a doctor. And that's when I learned about Waterloo. If I was going to do this coding thing seriously and actually give it a shot, I needed to get into this university. I participated in the computer science club, wrote every competition that I could. Did pretty well on some, bombed others. I still remember the relief I felt when I finally got accepted into Waterloo Computer Science. People from Waterloo work for Facebook, they work for Google. I was gonna be a software engineer. If only 12-year-old me could see me now. When I actually accepted my position, it was like obviously a happy moment, but it was frankly a little melancholy as well. Accepting this offer was to say goodbye to being a doctor. I mean, for close to 16 years, I thought that I was going to be a doctor. I told people in my family I was going to be a doctor. So maybe it felt like I was letting my family down, or maybe it felt like I was letting myself down. Either way, my future was determined. I was going to go to Waterloo. My first year rolled around, and Waterloo was not what I expected it to be. It was so hard, more difficult than anything I had done before in my life. I got rejected from hundreds of companies, and my grades dropped to the point where I started to question if I belonged here. I still remember feeling sick to my stomach, walking to an exam that was essentially an execution. just as quickly as that future where I was a doctor left, my love of problem solving started to leave too. I guess I had not run into problems I couldn't solve before. Maybe I'm just not smart enough to cut it. I can't compete with these people. Did I make the wrong decision? No. I already made my choice. There's no going back. When something isn't working and you can't change your circumstances, you have to change. I cut out the bad factors from my life. I started working on myself mentally, physically. Slowly I improved and my average started to reflect it. I was getting interviews. Sure, the companies were small and no one's ever heard of them, but I could officially call myself a software engineer. I'm a 21-year-old that's worked for some of the biggest software companies on the planet. I've made some of the best friends I've ever had doing it. I've co-founded a tech company and I make dumb videos on YouTube. I still sometimes wonder how my life would be if I had never downloaded Minecraft. Would I have been a doctor? Would I have been more successful? Would I have been happier? I don't play Minecraft anymore. I guess I've changed with the years, but downloading one stupid game that a Swedish man made changed the course of my life forever when it taught me about programming. I still have a lot of issues, and I'm not the person I want to be yet, but this story is still being told.